They have nailed the formula. He is cool as a cucumber, no matter the situation. That comes from Wendy. Now I should probably just do a regular take in case I did it.
That might be a good idea because I think you said he came up the stairs with a mop first.
Yeah,
of all.
I don't know. All right.
I like the subtle Southern accent. It's
all right. The Southern is good. All right.
Subtle Southern.
All right.
Hello, I'm David Heyman, and I play Brace on the TV show Taboo. And you're listening to the Shat on TV podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Taboo Edition, the unofficial podcast companion piece to the hit FX and BBC One show Taboo. I am one of your hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me is Gene Lyons.
I have a use for you.
And this is our fan email episode where we look back on this week's episode of Taboo and provide our feedback on the top listener emails for the week. This week was the penultimate episode. Gene, as this series is winding down, there's one more episode left. People are writing in with their theories and their explanations of what they think is going to happen at the end of this series and at the end of the season. We got a lot of really good feedback.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about how this show compares to Westworld, which was our first show as a podcast for Shat on TV, is that Westworld from the get-go was giving us lots of things to noodle on. It gave us a bunch of information in bursts really early on. Taboo treated things a little bit differently. The pieces don't really come together until the end. A lot of people have talked about how the flashbacks are very homogenous in the sense that you don't get a lot of additional information from any particular one, whereas Westworld was kind of giving us more and more. In Taboo, it was more like things there was a chipping away at an exterior until you finally got to the guts of what it was. And I think that's where we kind of are now. So now the emails are pouring in. Now the theories are starting to develop.
Right. They said at the beginning of this, and I believe Tom Hardy referenced this in one of the early interviews, is that once the conclusion of the season one is finalized, you can look back and see all the interconnected puzzle pieces. Do you foresee that really happening, or do you think that he's just trying to give lip service?
Yeah, Raj, I'm a big fan of this show. I like the style of it. I like the mood of it. I like that it harkens back to a lot of literature that I appreciate. But I feel like perhaps Tom Hardy is more proud of this show than the show has really lived up to. He seems very full of himself. And I really hope it's not the case where, it's the sort of thing where he's not as intellectual as maybe he imagines. And so he's putting this thing out there as this piece of art and it's really not. Not so bad as a Corey Feldman sort of, shit show, but the sort of thing where, again, I really appreciate it. But sometimes art is not necessarily that smart. It's just kind of beautiful and you can appreciate it on a visceral level.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did get a couple of emails in from Michael and Kristen asking where I was over the last couple of episodes for Taboo. I didn't bail on it. Sometimes we just have scheduling issues, and with three of us, luckily that gives us the ability to schedule around and have and not miss a drop of an episode. So for those who were excited that I was gone, I apologize. I am back. For those who miss me, the two of you, thank you so much for writing in. So if this is your first time ever listening to our River Rants episode, this is what we do. We take the top emails of the week and we read and respond to them. You can check out all the emails in their full unedited versions on our website, shatontv.com. Just search for Taboo FX and the River Rants, and you can see all of those in their entirety. There's a comment section. You can join the conversation there as well. For this week, Gene, I think we have the top 10 emails of the week, which is, again, we received the most emails ever for Taboo in week 7. So with that being said, Gene, take us to the river. All right, our first Taboo River Rant comes in from Noah. Noah writes, "Hey dudes, love the podcast, a fan of the Westworld Edition 2. Addressing a couple things Gene and Big D talked about in River Rants for episode 6. The reason why fans, including myself, were genuinely disturbed by Winter's murder is not just because she was a child. Yes, she was weird and said cryptic things, but she was also full of hope. Life in that place and time seems harsh and cruel, and here is Winter, born in a brothel in the most lowliest of circumstances, yet she asserts a sweet relationship to James. She yearns to see America. She seemed to be one of the very few, if not the only person, that was drawn to him without some sort of ulterior motive. If there was one person we wanted a happy ending for, I believe her death foreshadows despair for all the characters in the story in general. As to why James is bent on reckless and self-destructive behavior, I believe he's displaying all the hallmarks of depression and PTSD. Although not the severe bound-to-bed depression, it explains his lack of empathy and interpersonal relationships as well as his hallucinations. I don't believe James is capable of love in his current state, and his lust for his sister is chemical. It makes him feel human, and is one of the very few things keeping him alive. His only real passion is revenge. If he had any true love for his sister and his supposed son, he would stay out of their lives because he is a human wrecking ball. I hope this warrants conversation. Looking forward to future series. That comes from Noah.
I agree, Noah. You're making a good case for Winter, but I feel like what you're giving me is facts about her, and I don't think they were really conveyed in the actual show, in the sense that, you know, there's a fine line. Obviously, if you want to have this optimistic, innocent character, you can't overdo it or else it's going to be schmaltzy. I get that. But to me, she was a wharf rat. She was a little cryptic. I liked her as a character, I guess, but we didn't really get a lot of her. And again, there are artistic decisions you can make on a show that can really, if you're trying to get a point across. So for instance, in this episode, we saw all this other stuff going on, and then we get Winter for a second at the end. She brings James a drink, and then next she's dead. Now, to make this an effective episode, what you do is you follow Winter around her whole day, right? What does she do? How does she live? Show us all those aspects of her that make her worth caring about. And then at the end, you have that parallel going on with whatever's going on with James, and then they intersect at the end of the episode. That's how you make a powerful episode.
Right. And, you know, unfortunately, that's what The Walking Dead used to do, and that used to tip you off to see, okay, well, this main character is going to bite it. And at times it was very effective. Other times it wasn't, like when they tried to do the fake out at the end of Glenn when he's on the dumpster. I got to be honest, Gene, I don't think there's any character in this show that I would care if they died, including Winter. And maybe that makes me cold, but I think it has more to do with the fact that the narratives have yet to explain or make me feel something for the characters. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I should feel something for Winter. What are your thoughts on that? If there was any character that was going to die, which one would you care about?
I care deeply about Chichester, actually. Chichester seems to be he's the force of justice. He is on a righteous path. He's endured much, and I just like his style. I like that he goes out there while Sir Strange is golfing and is just like staring him down. And Sir Strange says to him, "You know, I'm trying to make a shot." He's like, "Well, then make your shot." You know, I like his character. He's got a lot of panache. There's a lot of likable characters in here, but again, like you're saying, it's mostly stylistic. It's not because I feel any sort of sympathy toward them.
Right. Yeah. Noah, thank you so much for writing in. The next River Rant comes in from Annie. Annie writes in, Winter? Dead? By the hands of James Keziah Delaney? No. And you can't see what the attachment for her is to the audience? For me, it's dazzlingly obvious. We care about her because JKD cares about her. She has a relationship with him that is unique, with all the possible partial exceptions of the wonderfully played Helga, who is, after all, Winter's mother. Insofar as she is not afraid of him, and on his part, he does not seek to exploit her. Through her, we see glimpses of him, of a humanity and an appreciation of, if not purity, then at least innocence. At least that's what I care about. A possibility. Winter is James's daughter. There was mention of intimacy between he and Helga. Thanks for all your hard mullering and pondering, chaps. And again, that comes from Annie. So she asked the question, this is a topic I think we talked about earlier on in the season, is whether or not there was a deeper connection between Winter and James, if in fact it was the daughter of he and Helga.
I mean, if that's the case, and James just has illegitimate children running all around London, which would be a little strange. You would think also that he would care more for the fact of, like, with his son or his brother, whichever it is, with Robert, you see that he is, James is taking care of him in the sense that he's affording for him to be safe, paying for his care. he would not be. I don't think he'd be allowing his own child to be living in a whorehouse. I don't see that. With regards to also her not being afraid of him, there are scenes where she is distinctly afraid of him. When he starts speaking in tongues to her, she gets freaked the hell out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think she was kind of afraid of him at the docks, too. When, she's like, well, I brought you, and he's like, no, I need you to get away from me. I've got stuff going on here. And then from a math perspective, how old would you say Winter is?
Yeah, Winter strikes me as maybe, I don't know, 13 years old, something like that. Probably like early teens.
Okay, we know James has been away for 10 years.
Right.
And based on the information that we are told, or we can assume, that James had sex with Helga probably around the time that he became sexually mature, right? That seemed to be, he explained, okay, you were my first or something like that, when I became a man.
Yeah, but sexually mature in Georgian England was like 8.
No, you couldn't.
Yeah, people died at like 30.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
What in 1814? I think the average life expectancy was like maybe 40 years old if you were, and that was extreme. Well, actually, no, average was like 30.
Ben Franklin lived till he was well into his 80s.
Yeah, Ben Franklin was rich.
Ben Franklin had syphilis.
Well, he's still rich. He was rich with syphilis.
I don't think that it's his daughter. I mean, if you did the math there and you think she's 13 and James is somewhere in his, mid to early 30s, the math could work out that it could be Helga and James's daughter. But I think I'm with you. I don't want there to be too many illegitimate children.
Fact for the audience. In 1900 in Britain, the life expectancy for a man finally reached 47 years old.
Okay.
In the late 18th century, so going into the 19th century,
sure,
it rose to 40. So, and here's a great one. During the Middle Ages, the life expectancy in England was 35 years old.
Okay. So what you're saying is a bunch of 8-year-olds could go to the red light district and get their rocks off.
Probably not 8. I was exaggerating a bit, but I would say like 12 would probably be your boning people at 12.
All right. That's fine. Thank you so much for writing in, Annie. We appreciate it. So the next email River Rant comes in from Wendy, and I should preface that it's entitled River Rant Taboo, Perspective from a Southern Woman, and it's written in Southern. So here it goes. It goes, your podcast is wonderful. Keep up the good work. Now, here is me cutting loose. Stop with the preparing to die bullshit. Y'all need the female perspective. Tom Hardy goes nowhere other than next season for the ears, eyes, and libidos of all the women watching this show. It's porn for women. Wake up. He is a man who gets shit done, and women love that. He is handsome, masculine, and passionate. Damaged and smoldering and commanding, and has a very hidden soft side. There is no show without James. He rides a white horse, for crying out loud. Who gives a hoot what a bunch of snaggletooth, pasty British men do from here on out? Every sex scene so far has been doggy style, with the exception of the one in which he is making love to Zilpha. The way he took 2 stairs at a time up to her bedroom without that little hop most of us put on that move when we do it was SEXY. They have nailed the formula. He is cool as a cucumber no matter the situation. Ah. And again, that comes from Wendy, the Southern girl. So what do you think of this?
It's funny because with TV shows, often when you speak with a female audience, huge generalizations, this is just anecdotal. When I've talked to guys, they talk about something that happened in the plot, something that, some action, With women, it's often who is in the show and their feelings toward that person. And I'm glad that Wendy wrote this one because it's something that we really haven't examined as far as Tom Hardy goes, is that he is not trying to be glamorous in this show. He's not trying to be, I shouldn't say not sexy, I mean, he's naked a lot, but he is really getting into this bestial role, which he often does. And it's interesting to see how that resonates with women, particularly in the year 2017.
Now, do you think this is only attractive to Southern women? I assume Wendy's from the United States, Southern women, right?
Yeah, I don't think she's Southern British.
Yeah, right.
South African.
Yeah. But I think this has to go to like the alpha male syndrome, right? You can be as brooding and as mean and as ill-tempered, but as long as you have a soft side and you get shit done, like that's the epitome of like male silverback alpha gorilla.
Yeah, it's interesting because growing up, especially you and I are both products of the 90s. You know, in the mid-90s when I was a teenager and becoming a man, it was frowned upon to fill into these, you know, typical gender roles, right? Like that was considered anti-intellectual and silly, and we would kind of poo-poo those people. And then I found as I grow older, now in my 30s, that women, whether they were just hiding it for a while or they develop that as they get older, now this is what they're all about. They want Mr. Get Shit Done.
Well, I think you can do that without grunting and killing people and biting their necks off, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would look more toward like for getting shit done, more of an Atticus Finch or something like that. You know, like you can be smart and eloquent, and so Justin Trudeau, that's a get shit done guy.
I agree. Like I think we should all aspire to be Justin Trudeau versus a serial killer. So this is what I questioned is. You could be a serial killer, or you can be a felon who goes around with a murderous spree, as long as you get shit done. Like there's almost an admiration for people who are serial killers.
Sure.
Like think about it. Like who are the serial killers that you think of the most? Like what immediately comes to your head?
With serial killers?
Yeah, with serial killers.
Like who?
Yeah, like who?
Well, unfortunately, people think of Charles Manson, who actually didn't kill anybody.
Right, he did not kill it, but he psychologically played with other people's minds to get them to kill for him.
Sure.
So when you think about it, like you think of like Jeffrey Dahmer and
not sexy.
No, but in his own way, he was sexy. I mean, to a certain lifestyle, that's what he did. Ted Bundy, coming from Florida. The point that I'm making here is these people had admirers. People would write to them. People got. I think Ted Bundy, didn't he get married? Someone married him or whatnot. I think that if you're going to murder someone, you got to do it James Delaney style. You got to do it multiple times. That way people like women like Wendy will still find you sexy. You can't just go around just kill one guy, right? You got to do it multiple times is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I think we've established in this show that he's going around mutilating people.
Yeah.
He's got ostensibly an illegitimate son.
Mm-hmm.
He's got, he's fucking his sister.
Right.
Like, what's it going to take, ladies? Now, I agree, though. Here's the thing. As a heterosexual male, I still think it's pretty damn sexy.
Okay. Wendy, thank you so much for writing in. The next River Rant Taboo email comes in from Melissa. Melissa writes in, James is haunted by something, a demon of sorts, that feeds on fear and guilt. Now, for some reason, he'd been forced, compelled, or willing to feed this thing. Now, we see him and he has no guilt or fear. What happened to him to make them lose this guilt and fear? I get the feeling that whatever it was has something to do with his father and his death as well. You talk on episode 2 about the morgue scene and whether that body that raises up to confront James is a specific person from his past. I do not think that it is. I think that whatever demon, if you will, that is haunting James is using that body as a vessel in an attempt to scare James for fear to feed on. Finally, you question how someone who had been away for so long knows so much about what is going on back home and managed to make it home quick enough to see his father before he went into the ground. I think the answer is paranormal forces. Whatever James is into, it's a two-way street, and he's using those forces to collect information and make his plays. What are your thoughts on paranormal elements at work here? And again, this comes from Melissa, and she put her Twitter as @mellowyellow.
I really hope you're right, Melissa, in the sense that we've kind of established that this show doesn't do a great job as a mystery. Most of the mysteries in the show we figured out pretty early on. There's not a lot of forensics involved in that. There's not a ton of character development where we don't see a lot of people changing over the course of the last 8 episodes. There's some politics, but it's not the kind of political thriller that you would have in like a House of Cards or a Dangerous Liaisons. So it kind of leaves you with very few options other than what we originally said. One of the first notions was that this is a horror movie or a horror show in the classic sense of horror, and that there are some supernatural and paranormal activities going on.
Yeah, I definitely believe that there was some sort of two-way communication. In fact, I think they talk about that with the fact that he used to speak to his father in the fire, right? So I believe maybe he got the tip from there. Do you believe this demon that she points out here that Melissa talks about, do you think that also manifests itself as the mother that James is seeing flashbacks or when he goes into the water he sees? Do you feel like that demon that's following him around is also appearing to him in different vessels, so to speak, such as the guy who got up in the morgue, the big 6'3" African slave.
It's a good thought. I think that they're two separate things. And here's why, is that he still doesn't he seems to be discovering the mother in the sense that it's evolving, it's frightening him in some ways, it changes. When he was in the morgue and, again, the giant slave, for lack of better words, approached him, he seemed aware of it, comfortable, in control of it, like it was something old, something that he was used to. But I do like this idea that he's got a link to something from his past. Maybe, again, it's a sort of a deal with the devil sort of thing where that would explain if he has a purpose and he's being followed by this thing and it's not his time yet, he's got to accomplish this thing before it's all over, then it gives a sort of a tragic twist on his plans and also explains why he's got such a limited time frame, why he's got to make everything happen so quickly.
But could that demon also be the thing that he used telepathically to summon, and have sex with Zilpha in a remote status?
There could be a connection there. I hope that that's something that they answer in episode 8. I would hate if all these things are just left out in the open, and especially if the show never comes back and we're just left going, well, what the hell was that all about?
I agree. Hopefully that answers your questions, give you something to think about. Melissa, thank you so much for writing in. The next email, River Rant, comes in from Tanya. Tanya writes, "Greetings, gentlemen. What I really liked, even though I was utterly devastated by it, is the way James treated Zilpha. What a classic dick move. It was so heartless, so merciless, and it felt so authentic and true to life that I couldn't believe my own eyes and ears. I know you guys believe that James did it only to protect his loved one from what was about to happen, but I'll allow myself to be a pessimist on this. From all the visions James has had so far, it seems to me that he can communicate with the dead and stays in constant contact with his mother. How Oedipian? Oedipian, like Oedipus. Got it. Is that really a word? Can you say it? Is it? Oh, no, that's not a word. Oedipian is not a word. I didn't think so. Okay. She told him not to kick Lorna out. She showed him where she was kept. She told him to drop Zilpha, maybe even out of jealousy. As for your question, I think James is not going to die. I believe that while being a slave or before becoming one, James did indeed die and was brought back to life. That's why he can now talk to the dead. He joined them once and now finds himself somewhere in between our world and the world of the spirits. I also think Zilpha might kill herself because what James did to her can break a person big time. Sorry for being so grim. As usual, thank you for your amazing podcast. That comes from Tanya all the way in Tokyo."
First, I want to compliment Tanya for coming up with the first smashogram of names in this show. Jailfa. Hashtag Jailfa. James and Zilpha.
Is that what that is?
That's brilliant. So, for me, look, it is an interesting idea to think that these visions James has of his mother actually are warnings, that she's giving him guidance, in the sense that when he was having sex with Zilpha, I interpreted it as some sort of psychological trauma caused him to back off of her. But what if it was the case that his mother was communicating with him, this is a bad move, get away from her? And in fact, we were misguided. We thought he was trying to protect her. He's obeying the wishes of his mother, a la Psycho, to be like, stay away from her. That's not the path for you. That his mother's been guiding him this whole time.
Right. I don't think there's any jealousy between Zilpha and the mom. I mean, there might be, right? Because we would assume that the half-sister and brother relationship comes from the father, not from the mother. So, I mean, there could be some of that. I mean, the fact that when he's having relations with her, that seems the most inopportune time for a mother to start, like, I don't want you doing this. You can only be mine.
Yeah, this is the tab.
Yeah. No, go ahead. That's the taboo situation there.
Let's say this is the. Sorry, go ahead.
That is very Oedipian when you think about it.
It's basically the Tom Hardy TV version of when your mom like knocks on the door while you're masturbating. Like it's the worst possible time for her to show up. Yeah, she's trying to move you along. Like, don't enjoy yourself right now. You've got work to do. Whatever. Right. Yeah. But getting to the other part of Tanya's email, her river rant, James's relationship with the dead. This is an interesting notion that a few other listeners have written in on. The fact that he is perhaps a revenant, that he was allowed to survive or brought back from the dead to accomplish one mission. You've seen this sort of story with Leonardo DiCaprio's The Revenant. You've seen it with The Crow, where there's a person who's given an allotment of time and they have one singular purpose, and that's all they're there to do. In that case, it would be, interesting that he can't die because he's already dead, or even if he succeeds and no one kills him, he disappears or dies on his own.
I had no idea that's what the movie Revenant was about, but now that makes a lot more sense. I thought it was just based on a true story, this guy. But no, I mean, he was brought back. Okay, yeah, makes sense. I like that. I like that idea, Gene. I've got nothing else to add to that. So thank you so much for writing in. The next email River Rant comes in from Bill in Toronto. Bill writes, "Good morning, Roger, Gene, and Big D. This weekend, I sent along an MP3 of my audio challenge to the listeners to give us their best David Heyman, but realized it was not declared as an impression. The attached revision has full disclosure to avoid any confusion. Speaking of Brace, he's having a bit of crisis of conscience, isn't he? The other file is just my favorite line so far. Look forward to the shows this week." And that comes from Bill in Toronto. So basically what this is, Gene, is, and I listened to this, his impression is spot on of David Heyman. And I guess he's asking listeners to send in their best Brace impression.
Absolutely. I was very impressed with this, and I would love to get, if people could send in theirs as well, just to have our supercut of all the Brace impersonations. And maybe, I think we could spring for some sort of a gift for the best one. Obviously, Bill has a bit of a jump on everyone else because he's the master and started the challenge, which is a good idea, Bill. I never really thought of that. Start contests that you already know you're good at, and you have a pretty strong chance of winning.
That's right. Yeah, so we'll play this impression right now, and then if you think you can top this, use your voice memo if you have an iPhone or an Android, and then email that into hosts@shadontv.com. Here it is, Bill as David Heyman.
Hello, I'm impersonating David Heyman, who plays Brace on the TV show Taboo. You're listening to the Shat on TV podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
All right, Bill, thank you so much for writing in and for that. The next River Rant email comes in from Anisha. Anisha writes in, "Dear Raj, Big D, and Gene, I have a question, for you. Actually, a few uses. Number one, what is up with Horace's fascination with tribal women? When James found an old program in his father's belongings from a play Lorna acted in, her role was one of a savage tribal woman. I wonder if her costume was similar to how Salish looked when Horace met her at Nootka. Number two, in the forest wet dream scene in episode 4, was James actually making sex with Zilpha?" I like that, making sex. "He appeared to be looking for Zilpha while the thing in the wooden mask was having intercourse with her. In the same episode during the Countess Musgrove party, someone or something was wearing the identical wooden mask. Maybe the mask is the one speaking to Zilpha and the one who told her to kill her husband. Maybe James was not always visiting Zilpha in her dreams as an animal to make sex with her. Could it be something else? Which is why she might be so cray-cray. I also wonder if Salish was trying to drown James or if she was preparing him for a vision that she had about his future. A vision of the shipwreck of the Cornwallis and a vision of him being waterboarded. Perhaps she was trying to build up his tolerance to being underwater. James appears to be prophetic in his visions. The explosion, cutting the thumb off of traitors, etc. Maybe he inherited this gift from Salish. Also, Salish being in the tower with him in episode 7 totally creeped me out. Hopefully I didn't go too far down the rabbit hole with these questions. Looking forward to the podcast. Again, thank you for what you do. And again, that comes from Annie in Cincinnati. Gene, your thoughts on her uses for us?
Those are all great points, Annie. I'd like to focus on the sex scene between James and Zilpha, the astral projection sex. The thing in the mask. Now, we've seen during other flashes that one of them had Thorn behind the mask. I think that it's, again, that gives us the idea that the identity of this thing is not necessarily static, that it's not one person or anything. It's more of an image, whether it's in James's head or in Zilpha's head. I don't think that I think it's in James's head, honestly. But it is interesting that you mentioned. I went back and looked, and you're absolutely right. In that scene, it looks like he's searching for her, which could mean that there's another force at play. Again, when she kills Thorn, she thinks James told her to do it, but James is not aware. So there could be a factor that we're not seeing here, something else, another force. But I wouldn't know who or what it was.
Yeah, in terms of his fascination with tribal women, I mean, I got to be honest with you. I mean, that is just some people have fetishes, right? I typically enjoy a woman of South American descent. That's typically what I go for, and it just seems to be a likening. What do you prefer in terms of appearances of women?
Zilpha.
That's right.
Basically.
Yeah, I like an exotic look. And, honestly, maybe Horace also had a fascination with subservient women. I mean, back in the Georgian era, they looked down upon people of native descent, especially in the Americas. And maybe he thought that she would be subservient to him. And when she wasn't, he sent her off to Bedlam. I think that probably has something to do with it.
Yeah, again, I think what we've established through this episode, through these river rants, is that there's so many questions left to answer. And it's possible that we only get one more episode. There's no way that they can write a coherent episode that makes sense, that brings us all together and satisfies the audience. I think they're really in a lot of trouble here. Again, these things appeared earlier in the series, and we thought, okay, they've got time to explain this all, but that time is running out. And again, with the question of was his mother trying to drown him, on the question of why was Horace and the tribe woman, why was Lorna's name circled? And so I hope that it's not the sort of thing where they're just going to leave us to debate this for the next month and never give us answers to it. I'd really like to know, because there are certain things like Lost, shows like Lost, where I was perfectly willing to let those mysteries lie, because they were you were in this sense of wonder. It was a miraculous place. This isn't that. And so they've set it up as a mystery. They've set it up with all these, dark and foreboding, very stylish things. And the problem with being really stylish is if there's no substance behind it, people are very disappointed.
Yeah, agreed. And I'm probably going to have to put myself in that rowboat in terms of being disappointed. And also, I tried to go back and watch the pilot of episode of Lost. And I used to think that, oh my God, the pilot of Lost is one of the best ever. Nothing could ever top that. Go back and watch it. It is not good. It does not hold up the test of time.
Now, is the pilot the episode where they're on the beach and you've got the airplane engine and everything?
Yeah.
I thought that was wonderful. What would you not like about it?
No, I did too at the time. The first time I ever watched it. Lost was one of those shows for me. This was right around the time that they had the box set DVDs. I was not a Lost head at this time, but they had put out 4 or 5 seasons of box sets. And on Black Friday here in America, Best Buy, they were on sale for $12. So I got up through season 4 and sat there and binge watched them all. And I thought it was incredible, because at the time there was nothing else like that on television. But I think they're on Netflix now. You can go back and you can binge them all. It does not hold up. You're like, what is going on? Oh, there was the smoke monster in episode 1. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I like to always point to Heroes as an example of where I was like, this show is amazing. And
That's right.
3 years later, I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Why did I ever like this? No, I agree.
Hero. It was just one giant ad for the Nissan Versa.
That's right. Thank you so much for writing in. The next Taboo River Rant email comes all the way from Gary. Gary writes in, after the last episode and listening to your episode this morning, I have an idea that might work within the narrative framework of Taboo. Essentially, Delaney died when the ship sank and returned as a revenant, his only intention being to exact revenge on those responsible, the East India Trading Company, specifically Sir Strange. Thus, no one can actually harm him in any way, shape, or form. This is why he is so resistant to torture in episode 7. It would also go some way to explain why he has had visions of the dead. He is neither dead nor alive, but has one foot in the grave. It might also explain why Delaney has been acting the way he has. He has gathered people around himself to bring his revenge on the EIC. He doesn't care about the war in America, about the Canadian-American border. All his consuming interest is to may the board, if not the whole component, of the EIC and make them suffer for what they've done to him. And again, that comes from Gary H. So we talked a little bit about the idea in the other email about the Revenant and him coming back. Gary seems to be on board with that same theory.
Yeah. So this is, again, I think this is a really good idea. I don't know if I agree 100% with Gary saying with a couple things. One is no one can actually harm him. Oh, they can harm him. He feels pain very much. And they might not be able to kill him, but he's definitely hurt. And again, this kind of goes back to, I think it's more like the movie The Revenant or The Crow, where he's not invulnerable. There's always a weakness, right? The Crow had his crow, where if that was hurt, then he was hurt. In The Revenant, Leonardo DiCaprio was weakened. He worked his way back, but he was still, you could kill him. Also, with James's resistance to the torture, I think that is strictly his ability to, that weakness that he has of drifting off and having visions, turns out in this case to be helpful for him, especially when they make the mistake of putting him in water, because water is like his safe place, right? It's where he can transport himself, where he can project, and so he just goes to another place that seems, not so bad. I do agree though that he doesn't give a shit about the war in America, about border disputes. I don't think he cares about money even. His drive is to bring down the EIC, and I think that's about it.
Do you think that's going to happen in your prediction? Do you think he's going to be able to accomplish, or do you think this is all going to be open-ended? And again, you were not a fan of the ending of Westworld because you felt like they tried to bring too much into it and you just didn't appreciate the execution. But if I were to compare what I think is going to happen in Taboo to Westworld, Westworld seems to be far superior from a storytelling perspective of where it should be at this particular moment versus where Taboo is.
Oh, zero argument. Westworld, I had some gripes with the way they did it. I didn't like the idea of expanding into other worlds. I thought that they were trying to do too many things at once. But the scene, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched Westworld, you're going to want to skip forward here a second. The scene where Dr. Ford is eventually killed, the positioning of where the man in black is, where Bernard is, everything about it, where Teddy is, the looks that are exchanged, the way people react, all that stuff was just so beautifully shot, so well done. I just had some gripes with, the escape scenes and some other things.
Right.
But for the most part, it was a masterpiece of a scene or an ending. This is, I feel, going to be very, very different. I don't think we're going to get a lot of satisfaction out of it. But again, here's what I'm really, really afraid of, and I hope it doesn't come true, is that he's got Strange alone in that cell, and I think we're supposed to assume that that's because he wants to exact revenge on Strange. I hope they don't have some sort of a deal from way back in the day.
Oh, they're going to. They're going to try and double-cross the Crown. There has to be something going on there. The whole reason he wanted to get to Strange, like, he's got him where he wants him.
Okay, so is it a total mindfuck to everybody who's watching this if, in fact, James is okay with slavery, he was okay with everything that was going on, he was working Strange the whole time,
right?
And this is just a plan to fuck the Crown and get away with something.
Personally, I think I need that in this show, because unfortunately, we've predicted almost everything that's happened in this show. So there's been, and I'm not a big M. Night Shyamalan guy. I don't need huge twists or anything at the end. But I just need a little something, a little something that would get, oh, you know what? They took a detour here, and I was not expecting that. And that's really cool. You don't think that having a little twist at the end would be neat?
Yeah, I think the only way that you salvage this season is, well, one of two ways. One is that there's something that's insanely poetic and depressing and just gets down into something darker than we could ever have anticipated.
Right.
Where it's like none of that other stuff matters because holy shit, what just happened?
Mm-hmm.
The other way is if you blindside us with something that was apparent the whole time, and we just, again, it's got to be something so huge that we forget about all the other things and just go, whoa, how did I not see that? And this is the sort of thing where we know he's got a history with Strange. We know that he served under him. We know that he was on a ship that was taking slaves to Strange's brother's plantation illegally. We know that Strange denies knowing him at all. It seems like if that were to happen, if they were in cahoots, we'd go, fuck, how do we not see that the whole time? Oh, hold on. So two other things. James, makes the will out to leave everything to the Americans. Up until that point, they still had ample opportunity to kill him and didn't.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And then beyond that, James, how is he in the know all the time? Well, if you had an insider who was actually in charge of the EIC, you would be in the know all the damn time.
That's true. So, and that would make up for the fact that we've seen what we thought was his inside man, Goddard's, running to like if Goddard's is supposed to be your on the lowdown guy, you've picked the wrong dude, because you're telling me with all the spies they have in London, they're not going to see this dude go running, every other day to James Delaney's house.
Right. And think about this. What is it that the EIC is asking for, and why do they go to the Crown? The EIC goes to the Crown. They said, you can have Nootka. We'll give you James Delaney on a platter because we've got these witnesses. All we want is this monopoly, right?
Right.
It's a monopoly that they didn't previously have. So it could be the fact that they're trying to reassert and reaffirm their position. This is entirely a play just to get the monopoly. And then you know what? You turn that monopoly over to the Delaney company. And now you've got, again, this is some serious tinfoil or shit. But at the same time, it is something that I can't think of another reason why he would want. What is he going to say to Strange that's going to make any fucking difference in this cell other than they've been plotting the whole time?
Yeah, one of the ideas that you and I have thrown around, and again, I don't want to get too tinfoily here, but I mean we're down this river already, so let's just complete it. You and I have thought about the opening credits scene. Right, if there's this idea that everything's going to come together in one big puzzle piece at the end of the conclusion of episode 8, what's the one thing that we continuously see in the opening credits that hasn't been addressed?
Is that James floating in the water, the American flag?
The American flag, right? And then I think Zilpha, someone looks like Zilpha, or maybe Lorna Bow, like a woman, basically the silhouette of a woman. We know that James is trying to get a boat to go to America, right? Once he completes his plan. Do you think the entire episode or at the end is going to be that opening scene where they're on the boat sailing to America, and then the EIC or the Crown sabotages the ship and it sinks, and it's him lying in the water and everyone else around him dies and the flag is floating down the ocean? Do you think that might be a possibility for how the series ends? And
Sure.
Would you be satisfied with that?
Again, if it's tragic enough, if that episode can make me. Here's the thing: is that if James were to die, I'm not devastated. And if that's the desired impact, then I'm not. And so, like you said, I still can't think of anybody who would die in the show that would devastate me. So death is not, it's not a powerful tool in this case. It's got to be something like the death of a dream, maybe, possibly. But are we really rooting for anybody? I don't know.
No, this show does. I mean, you've touched about this and how that's one of the things you like about the show is you don't root for anyone, really.
Right.
Anyway.
So that's not a powerful way to close it. So the way you got to close it is more, it's got to be something so artistically amazing, such a deep secret, or something that's just such a blindside that you go, wow, that was something powerful. But I'm really hoping I'm wrong on this. I'm really hoping that they do something that absolutely blows everyone away, so I can say, you know what, I was right about this show. You guys are all wrong. It's amazing.
Thank you so much for writing in. The next email River Rant comes in from Clementina. Clementina writes in, hello from your regular listener, Sporadic River Ranter. I've just finished the last episode. Born to Grunt is a wonderful slogan for a t-shirt or a tombstone. To answer your question, I think James should die. It makes a lot of sense plot-wise, and I honestly don't see any other satisfactory resolution. But I really, really don't want him to. It seems such a waste, and I'd love to see his character explored further. However, Stephen Knight is involved here, and knowing what they did on Peaky Blinders, I'm more hopeful for an unexpected ending. If you're not familiar with that show, they managed to get the protagonist out of certain death in a way that doesn't insult your intelligence or make you quit watching. Now, moving on to my main point, I'm really worried about Zilpha. I agree with you, James is obviously trying to push her away for her own good, but we've seen her become both more resolved and reckless. I'm afraid that she might do something drastic either to convince him they do belong together or in retaliation for the perceived rejection. To be pushed away after overcoming all of her moral and religious inhibitions, after breaking several taboos, she must be justifiably devastated. And in the midst of James's intricate plan, she seems to be a rare, unpredictable factor, the only thing that surprises him. I don't have any concrete ideas as to how, but I wonder if she will be the one to bring about the fall of the House of Delaney. I both want and don't want the next Saturday to come. Keep up the good work. That comes from Clementina all the way in Poland.
I'm surprised that again. So here's the counter argument from a fan of Delaney saying that some people don't want to see him die, right, and that people are rooting for him. So that's interesting in the sense I wasn't a big fan of Peaky Blinders, Clementina. Honestly, I thought that the soundtrack was terrible. I thought that it was a really hammy show. They did an excellent job at doing Birmingham accents, like the accents were dead on, but it was not really a quality show. So that doesn't give me a lot of faith, honestly.
I never watched Peaky Blinders, so I don't have anything to compare it to. But if Stephen Knight has done this, I mean, Clementina sounds to be more like an expert than we are on this. And if you think it was too hammy, like how did the ham factor compare in Peaky Blinders to what's happening here in Taboo? But shit, Tom Hardy basically is hamming it up in every single scene.
No, I disagree. Peaky Blinders is very much a BBC show. In the style that it's shot, whereas I'm not saying it's a BBC show. I'm saying it's got that BBC fingerprints on it, like Doctor Who, where it's like you've got these soundtracks that it's a very BBC thing to do. Soundtracks that come out of nowhere, they don't really match the scene. Things are really flashy for flashy's sake. Right. They're just like boom, bam, bam, bam. It's like it's just too like. It's too much, and I feel like this show is much more grounded. It's much darker. It's much more muted. The soundtrack is just steady and ominous. You don't get any pop music or any sort of any
exterminate.
Is that your Dalek?
That's my Dalek.
So in that sense, I think Peaky Blinders had much poorer production quality. Now, as for the main point about Zilpha. Yeah, it is tragic if she's been brought this far and then is let go. And I could definitely see her being that. Again, I talk about Carlito's Way, where there's always that factor that you're not thinking about, and that's going to the thing that brings you down, the thing that you're not worried about at all, whether it's a child, a spurned lover, someone you thought was not a threat at all. That's the sort of thing that can ruin you.
But think of all the people that Delaney has around him. You got Zilpha. You got Atticus. You got Atticus's brother-in-law, the big giant cannibal. You got Chun-Li. You've got Brace. You've got his son. You've got Godders. You've got Coop. I mean, there's not one person that I can point to that said 100% would be on James's side. Like all of them have a reason. Even the doctor, Dr. Dumbarton, the Countess Musgrove. All of them seem to like. Potentially could bring down the House of Delaney, and Zilpha is probably one of the closest ones that if I was James, I'd be pretty worried that she might come after me, as opposed to Atticus or someone else.
I mean, I don't know. I think that love is generally. I shouldn't say that because domestic disputes happen all the time. People get killed, but for the most part, love, both as family and and romantically, I think that he feels that there's a certain degree of safety there. But again, she did just kill a guy like 2 days ago. So
true. Clementina, thank you so much for writing in. The final email of the River Rants episode comes in from Stacy. Stacy writes in, prediction: James Delaney will be alive at the end of episode 8. Endgame. Violence, destruction, and life-shattering vengeance for all the people responsible for the derailing of James's life in 1800, which led him going back to Africa in 1802. If he wins this, we will see him, Zilpha, and a few others escape London. Why do I think this? Because of the Sankofa on his back. The brand symbolizes consideration of the past to build a successful future. Process. It's been a game of moves and counter moves. To win a game, you have to concentrate and focus on the process. Dedication to the mechanics of the game and the process of the game creates the desired outcome. Much like the process of making gunpowder. Do it right, a little luck, and you win. Strange himself has called all the intrigue activity a game of chess. In chess, you sacrifice pieces, some of them even painfully so, in order to win the game. In poker, you throw in cards to build a better hand. In Taboo, people are the chess pieces or cards as a part of a process to win the game. James has surrounded himself with people he is willing to sacrifice and try to push away those he views as innocent. The loss of Winter created the need to be harsh with Zilpha, although I suspect it didn't work. He's repeatedly tried to push Lorna away. After briefly using young Robert, he has also sent him away to the house and away from the rest of his League of the Damned. We will lose more characters we enjoy, but so be it. And again, that comes from Stacy. So Stacy has another prediction. We talked about all those characters around James. She seems to be okay with losing a few of those if it ends up the end game is satisfactory of James being alive and taking down the East India. Your thoughts, Gene?
Again, I think that this might be, it's a great idea, but what would make it much more effective is if we cared more about these characters, if we felt more toward them, a little more sympathy. Because here's the thing, is that in a story where you've got, say, POWs that are escaping, or in a something like Saving Private Ryan, right? As you lose people one by one, you're hurt by it. You want to see people make it out alive, and so those sacrifices matter to you.
Right.
In this, because James doesn't care about them, we also don't care about them, and so those sacrifices, they're just tools. And in that sense, a show that is largely character driven, and I think we agree that this show is not strong enough on plot to be plot driven. It's got to be character driven, and on a show that's character driven, you got to make us, those losses have to feel devastating, and I don't think they will.
No, I agree with you. We kicked off the podcast with that. I don't think this show has done a very effective job of making us care about one character or the other, and maybe that was their intention. But if they're going to do this, as she writes here, as Stacey suggests, I don't think it's going to have the lasting impact that the writers or the producers were intending it to do, because there's no one I care about.
I think it's interesting to note that I hate to use such a popular show as a metaphor, but look at Game of Thrones. Okay,
Right.
Game of Thrones has very similarly several different factions that are all competing with each other, and sometimes they do horrible things and sometimes they do good things. As the classic saying goes of the Game of Thrones, good people do horrible things and horrible people sometimes do good things. That's the way the show works. But here's the thing. When a major character, whether it's a Lannister or a Tyrell or a Targaryen, or a Stark, when they die, you care one way or another. You're
Absolutely.
like, yes, like he got it, fine, he's dead, or like, holy shit, I can't believe they kill off that character. And this is the thing, is you can't make the argument that they're painted as wholly good or wholly bad. I think we talked about it before that, with Jaime Lannister, you find yourself rooting for him sometimes. You're like, he's a horrible fucking human being.
Right.
But you care.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't mean to be the Debbie Downer here, but I want them to stick to the landing. I don't think they're going to. I want them to prove me wrong. I want there to be a lot of questions answered, but maybe just a little bit of intrigue enough to where if there is a season 2, I'm interested in it. But where they are in the storyline, I don't think episode 8 is going to be like a 90-minute episode, is it? It's going to be its traditional hour, right?
I think it's just a normal episode, yeah.
Just a normal episode. So I don't know. Listen, I could care less, honestly, I guess at this point. I could care less what happens.
Yeah, to stress, I appreciate this show in the way that I appreciate a good novel. I like a lot of the stuff that's been done artistically. I like the inventiveness of some of the characters. I think that the execution isn't quite there. One of the interesting things to note again is, when you're watching a show and you get invested in a show, it's easy to not ask yourself some basic questions. And this is kind of the same way I felt about Westworld. Was there a scene where my heart was pounding? Was there a scene where my heart was breaking? No and no. Like, again, and to compare it to something like Deadwood or or Game of Thrones. In Game of Thrones, when you look at scenes like the Red Wedding, when you look at scenes like the Battle of the Bastards, nothing else in the world matters at that moment. You are in it, and I think that I've yet to have that moment with Taboo, but there have been some highlights. The first time that Zilpha and James have sex on screen, the first time we get to see James in action, scenes like that are effective. What I was really hoping for, honestly, was that first scene when we have James and the EIC in the room together, and there's just the wittiness, the banter, the cleverness of what's being revealed and stuff. I could have gone for 8 episodes of that. We had one scene of that.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Stacey, thank you so much for writing in. Thank you for all the emails, listener emails. Again, if you want to check out all of those emails and river rants that we received over the past week, go to our website, shoutontv.com, click on the river rant section, join the conversation. We have a comments area there. We love listener feedback, and we love getting involved with our fans like yourself and our listeners. Gene, is there anything else you want to talk about before we shut down and get ready for Saturday night's final episode if you're in Europe, and Tuesday night's final episode if you're here in America?
No, just wanted to thank everyone for hanging with us on this one. I love how many women are writing in. I think that is one hallmark of Taboo that we can really cling to, is that it does seem to have a very strong female following and a very vocal female following, and that's great to have a lot more women's input on the show. Since we're 3 guys, it's helpful to have that voice and to hear that side of things that we may not have on the conversation otherwise. So I appreciate that. Also, I really hope that everyone sticks around for American Gods. We've got about a month until American Gods comes out, so get the book, read it.
Yeah, actually, it's 2 months. They just announced it today before we started recording. I tweeted it out April 30th.
Okay, cool. So you've got less than 20 pages a day, and you can bang this thing out. So come on.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason. I did want to give a shout out to Indivisible Resistance. They wrote in and said to give a shout out to them. Speak truth to power, just like James. Keep up the good job, guys. And that's at Indivisible without the E. So you could follow them on Twitter and I assume other social media stuff. So shout out to Indivisible Resistance. That concludes this week's episode of Shat on TV Taboo River Rants Edition. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're everywhere, including Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. That address is at Shat on TV. You can also like us on Facebook. Just search for Shat on TV Podcast. Our website, again, is shatontv.com. That email address, if you want to join in the conversation for the final River Rants. I think we'll have the episode 8 River Rants. But I know with Westworld, we keep the Telegraph open. Listen, if there's enough interest and you still want to write in, we might do something like that, right?
I think we should do a wrap up after, some sort of a wrap up there. I don't know if we'll keep doing it monthly the way we do Westworld, only because, again, the following is not that big. And also, if we do that for every show we end up doing, we're going to be doing like
That's right.
3 episodes a month of shows that are not even airing. So that would be a bit much.
Yeah, but we fully expect you to have some sort of opinion or analysis, and maybe we just make the last episode 8 recap a long one and all about the River Rants. So again, that email address is hosts@shatontv.com. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you stop by iTunes, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. That really helps the podcast grow. Also, you can check out our store on the website for cool Shat on TV merchandise. That helps keep the lights on. On behalf of my co-host Gene Lyons and Big D Dick Ebert, I'm Roger Roper. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. You can check our bios out on the Shat on TV Twitter page, and join us on Tuesday for the deep dive episode, and next Friday for our final River Rants of season 1 of Taboo. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it. Take care. Good night.